proceed without him. So I will call this regular meeting of Council of the Municipality of Jasper to order for July 7th. Welcome all, and welcome our public guests who are joining us on Zoom. Councillors, you have today's proposed agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or other changes required to be made to the agenda? Hearing none, might have a motion, please, to approve the agenda for today's meeting as circulated. Councillor Keller-Harempy, thank you. All in favor? That's the regular, or pardon me, the minutes of regular meeting of June 30th have been circulated. Are there any errors required to be made to those minutes? I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes as circulated. Councillor McGrath, thank you. All in favor? That motion is carried. There seems to be a bit of a time delay for whatever reason, so I will adjust my practice and give you all lots of time to vote before I resolve anything that needs to be resolved by motion. There are no presentations scheduled for today. That is agenda item 4. Councillor Journeau, are you attempting to get my attention? No? All right, thank you. Is there any business arising from the minutes of the June 30th meeting? It appears not. If I have missed a response from anybody or an intended response, I'll be happy to come back to that. I'll move to agenda item 6, department reports. We start with Protective Services. Mr. Van Tighem.
Your Worship, we don't have Greg on here today, so I'll just have to take any questions of council.
All right, thank you. We have the written report, so questions on that. Councillor Demota.
Well, although it is mentioned in the report, it did state that the broadened activation of the ECC was turned off, I guess. I don't know the particular term for it. I don't have it in front of me. But I do want to ask, going forward, when there are health concerns in the community, or there's questions on issues that might have arisen, or addressing some of the rumors out there, where do council members and people of the community reach out to ask questions?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Demota, that's all through Alberta Health, and they have on their website the COVID response. So that's where information's posted, and also concerns can be submitted through their website. There's a form on there. Okay. For anybody to report or any concerns or whatnot. So
thank you.
Are there any other questions from councillors pertaining to the Protective Services report before us? It appears not, so I can move to agenda item 6.2, Community and Family Services report. Mrs. Waxer is there today, so I will let you speak to your report first. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I didn't have a lot to add to the report. As it turned out, the report was quite lengthy, but I wanted to express some appreciation for my staff who, through this difficult period, have been incredibly well organized and meeting the needs of the public, and under quite difficult circumstances. And I also wanted to do a shout out to Leanne Pelche, who did the work on our emergency social services plan. It's now been reviewed by both Nate and the provincial emergency social services plan, and we've received great accolades for a small community to have such a comprehensive and effective plan. So I wanted to express appreciation to Leanne's attention to detail in crafting all of that. I also wanted to indicate that the office at 627 Patricia Street is not yet open in its normal capacity. A doorbell hasn't been installed, and so if a person required assistance, they could be met at the door. We've also adapted what was used to be the parent link room into a client meeting room that allows for effective social distancing. As well, we do accept in-person appointments by appointment. And I think that's all I had to say for today. And I'm open to questions.
Thank you for that report, Mrs. Waxer. Questions from councillors? Councillor Keller-Hrampe.
Thanks, Mrs. Waxer, for your report, and thanks to all your staff for all their hard work. I just have a question. Daycare is open. Do we have only 18 kids currently enrolled?
We have Lisa, I think Lisa Daniel on the line. That was her plan.
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, okay. So I'll leave that to you to answer.
Currently, we have 23 children at the daycare, and we have 24 at Summer Fun.
Are we still getting the $25 a day, Mrs. Daniels?
For July, yes, at the daycare, it's $25 a day.
And do you think the enrollment is down because of people not working, especially with the $25 a day still there? I was just kind of curious.
I think it's a combination of things. Families not ready to return to care due to COVID-19. So whether that means they're just not comfortable or whether they're not working full time. We had not been sharing spaces. It was full-time only for the months of June and July, but we will be starting sharing again in August, which I believe is what a few different parents have been waiting for. So our numbers are definitely up for August. We're over 30 right now projected for August. So I do believe that will change the dynamic here and the amount of children we have. But I do think there's still a lot of families who are just not comfortable returning to care at this time.
Good. Thank you, Mrs. Daniels. Thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Other questions from councillors? Councillor Demota.
No, and I just, Mrs. Waxer, thank you very much, and a big thank you to your team. You know, these are trying times, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into this report. It's quite lengthy, like you said, but it's very worthwhile, and there's a lot of information in there. Unfortunately, we're not getting the same draws that we were getting on our Zoom feeds like we were during lockdown, and I think some of that information would be really helpful. One thing that I did want to say is that normally I at least try to wear a collared shirt for all council meetings. Our other gentlemen normally wear a shirt and tie, which is commendable. But today I'm wearing a North Face Jasper t-shirt, and the reason for that is because the kind folks over at Wild Mountain Willie's are donating $3 to each purchase of one of these shirts to the Jasper community. What I want to say this right, the Jasper Caring Community Fund, and that there's 3 subcategories in there, but people could speak to it a lot better than me. But like as it says on our website. The Caring Community Fund is a fund of last resort to help clients of community outreach services overcome small but significant barriers on their way to well-being. And some of the sub-funds in there are the Mental Health Crisis Fund, the Disaster Social Services Fund, and Child and Youth Participation Fund. And I like to help promote this in the community. If people have a little extra cash and they want to support something, I think it's worthwhile. You know, I'm not trying to signal one particular establishment in the community or a business, but I like the initiative, and I commend Mr. McDowell for taking the initiative on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Demota. Other questions for Mrs. Waxer? Well, I will thank you then, Mrs. Waxer, for that report. As you indicated, it was lengthy and thorough, which perhaps accounts for the very few questions that you got, because everything is answered in the report. So thank you, and to others in your department for preparation of that thorough report.
Our pleasure.
Agenda item 7 is bylaws. We have no bylaws for consideration today. So that takes us to agenda item 8, information updates. 8.1, mandatory masking in public spaces. And Mr. Furcho, I believe you're going to address that.
Oh, Your Worship, thank you. So this was from the last meeting was raised whether or not we can move forward with any type of mandatory masking, either through bylaws or business licensing. And so I did a little bit of pre-work on that with our legal support, just to find out whether or not other communities in Alberta have moved forward on that, because in different provinces, there's different authorities provided to municipalities and who's the front. Recently, and you guys will be aware of that and probably watching the news, some Eastern Canadian communities have moved forward with bylaws on restricting access to public facilities inside unless masked. Yeah, but for Alberta, so far, there haven't been any communities that have approached at least our law firm on support for creating a bylaw. The other side is the business licensing side. And how we may or may not want to go forward with anything there. So I thought for now I could just be available for council if there is any support required on the legal side. There is some information available here I can provide you if council chooses to go that way, but otherwise for now, Worship, maybe I'll leave that with council if council wants to discuss and see anything from an elected official perspective first, and then back to administration on this.
Thank you, Mr. Furcho. From council, are there questions or comments with respect to masking and or a masking bylaw in Jasper? Councillor Journeau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, and a presentation by Mr. Furcho on that. Just before the meeting, I was on Twitter, and one of the noted public health from Toronto, Dr. Abdul Shakawi, he was very well spoken. He presented a little video on another doctor that made a presentation on the mandatory mask wearing. And I'll try and, with my limited skills, copy it and send it to you. But basically it's saying that no, you shouldn't have a bylaw. You should try and get acceptance of the public, just like he used the dog leash. So when you're out in the open, when you don't, you can enjoy your dog off a leash, you do it. But when you're in a confined area, you put your dog on a leash, and it's compared that. So when you're entering businesses in confined areas, wear a mask, and otherwise don't have to wear a mask. And he suggested that acceptance by the public will become easier without a bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Journeau. Any other comments from councillors? Not sure who is first. I'm going to say Councillor McGrath, Councillor Kelleher-Empey, and Councillor Demota.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I have spent the past couple of weeks really analyzing this within both my profession as a healthcare professional and being mandated to practice a certain way, and also paying attention and having my finger on the pulse in the community. And I think this is it's a really tricky and difficult debate, and I do think it's a worthwhile conversation, and it's a really important conversation as it is near and dear to the hearts of many of our residents, and many of our residents are putting lots of care and attention into masking themselves while they're out in public and cannot maintain a safe distance from others. However, I recognize that there's many reasons why someone might be medically unable to don a mask or have difficulties with the subject of a mask due to trauma in their life and other circumstances. So it's sensitive to me, and it's really important to me. I do agree with Councillor Journeau's comments, and I also like the way that Edmonton used the word strongly recommended versus creating a bylaw. And one really fortunate spot that I feel as a small community, we're really lucky that we have only 3 entrances. And we do have an opportunity to get the messages that we want to get to the visitors, because I believe that most of our locals know the message already. It's just, how do we get this message to visitors? And I would hope that with our relationship with Parks Canada, we would be able to request them add this verbal direction to visitors at the gates, but also the signage opportunity to replace what is currently crafted at the entrances of Jasper to a professionally designed sign stating that mask use in the central business district and in areas of Jasper where you cannot maintain 2 meters distance from others is strongly recommended. I believe that we have an opportunity to put more than that point on professionally designed signage, as well as a message of kindness to ensure that our workers in our establishments are not being mistreated during these times that we're already all vulnerable. But I would like to see the words strongly recommended versus creating and mandating a bylaw. And I would like to see this on signs in our 3 entrances.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath. Councillor Keller-Hempy.
I agree with everything that Councillor McGrath and Councillor Journeau has just said. I also was listening to a radio show last week that was saying that mandatory mask is really not the way to go. Strong education. And we have entrances, as Councillor McGrath said, and we're fortunate that our town is small. And I think part of the problem is a lot of our guests are regional. We have some guests coming from regions that have had no cases of coronavirus. So in their areas, they're not wearing masks. So I think education is the way to go. I think we really need to educate our visitors. And I think we can do that by working with Parks Canada, Tourism Jasper, getting some pamphlets, some leaflets out that can be given out at the gates. When you come into town, we have those signs that says respect self-distancing. I think we need to have there, you know, we recommend that you wear a mask within our town. I think I'm talked to residents and I've talked to businesses, and they're really would hate to have visitors come in and they had to say to them, you can't be in my store if you don't wear a mask, and then they lose that business. And they liked it more on an educational side.
Thank you, Councillor Keller-Hempy. Councillor Demota.
Yeah, you know what? Everybody is said a lot of things that I wanted to say, and I'm glad that we're all thinking in that direction, right? Because we know that wearing masks has a dramatic effect in reducing the spread of the virus. So, but what I've been, you know, observing and a lot of people in the community is a complete disregard for public health. And that was the major reason for starting this. And I think sometimes when you start with an extremely conservative approach, you get a little bit more buy-in, and I appreciate the buy-in that we've been getting in. I've been soliciting as much information as I can through many vehicles. I appreciate all the feedback that we've got through social media and people that have contacted me personally, directly. So I've been able to gather a lot of information, right? I think at this point, turning a blind eye to the situation, even though like we have 6 weeks left of our busy period in the summertime, I think turning a blind eye is still irresponsible. And when I've reached out to other agencies, there's a lot of suggestions, much like what Councillor McGrath has stated, but there doesn't seem to be a willingness to help in a collective initiative. And that's what really concerns me, right? Because I think right now that people that are a lot of our majority of the visiting public are putting themselves at risk as well as members of our community, right? And I think that you can over message stuff to where people aren't going to listen, or there are easier ways to do it, but I don't have the answers to all that. The big issue is that asymptomatic infection is responsible for a large spread of this. And regardless if you're asymptomatic and you'll never show signs, or you're pre-symptomatic, meaning that you're carrying the virus already, but are not showing the symptoms yet, the fact is people don't know they're having it, and they're in the community spreading it. So we've had a close call already this week, and we know that wearing masks is really critical. I don't want this to continue to be a long rant or anything, because people start to lose interest in what I'm saying. But if there are other people that want to provide input, I still have a little bit of what I want to say. But I would like other agencies to help get involved in this, and not just put the onus again on council and administration to do all of the messaging and getting out there. I commend all the businesses in the community that have been taking, really good approaches, friendly approaches to assisting people that are visiting in getting into their establishments, into their shops. I think that locally we're doing a really good job. I've just, because we have an elevated risk, we have people changing in and out of Jasper on a daily basis. And although Councillor Keller-Harampe stated that many of these people, or some of these people, are coming from regions that have no cases, there are people that are traveling here from regions that we don't know about that are having increased cases. So we can't monitor that. And what is the best approach that we can collectively take care of our community so that we're not hindering visitation, but we're able to keep our town safe? Those are the approaches I think we need to talk about.
Thank you, Councillor Demota. Other comments? Mr. Furcho, you've heard a couple of comments and some support for the notion of increased awareness and increased opportunities for signage, and a slightly stronger message that is that masks are strongly recommended when physical distancing cannot be maintained. Are there any administrative challenges inherent in getting something like that out? I know that the signs that we have now are relatively small and restricted to respecting physical distancing. In order to get out a message which would include a strong recommendation of masks, what would be required?
Your worship, it's just the design of the sign and the size, and then the costing. So it depends on what message. We'd want to be clear on what exactly our message is. And just remember, people, they don't have a lot of time to read those signs as they drive by them. Those sign boards have been fairly effective because they're just a few words and they're lit. But just the signs, the static signs, I think being careful that we don't have too much text on there is important. Otherwise, the message doesn't get through. And certainly what I've heard from council is consistent with what most municipalities in Alberta are leaning towards, is more of the promotion side versus the enforcement side. That was what our law firm had suggested, that seems to be the most common route. But again, if council wants to explore anything else, I've got the information here for you. But that in terms of doing signage at each entrance, that's an easy one. That's not a problem. Anything else we could talk about? That signage, no problem.
Thank you. Councillor Butler and then Councillor Demota.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that I agree with the points made that really before we step into considering a bylaw, which leaves me with concerns around intent with respect to enforcement and practicalities, I think we should considerably step up our communication. There is really no messaging consistent, at least municipally derived messaging in town about wearing masks. I think we should design a logoed sign, Municipality of Jasper logo sign, something not too large, that says something simple like, please wear a mask in this space. And we should distribute those to all businesses and other indoor spaces in town, and just ask people to wear masks in indoor spaces. I think that would be a huge step ahead. And I think that those can be very simple and visible and eye-catching, and I think we could have that done in very little time. I agree with having signage at the entrances to the community, and I think we should also have a conversation with Parks Canada and see if it would be possible to consider distributing leaflets at the park gates, asking that people who enter the community wear in indoor spaces and where social distancing is difficult. And I think if we did those things, we would be huge strides ahead of where we are now. And I think we could get there in very little time and with not very much expense. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Demota.
Well, you know, my first step in anything is to try to promote something as opposed to, you know, shoving something down people's throats. So I think this approach is great. To me, I'm not, you know, if we're seeking input on what signs and everything should look like, and I think just having a simple sign and have it as large as possible without being too much of an eyesore of a mask, having please on the top, s'il vous plaît on the bottom, and that's as simple as, you know, and maybe something small underneath like please have your, or something somewhere saying please have your COVID kits with you, something to help promote, you know, that we're taking our health seriously here in our community. It doesn't need to be, if we start putting logos on stuff or municipal logos, people don't care about that. Like, I don't think that's the message right now. Who's saying it? It's just, I think having something at the entrance is important, and it should be just as simple as with the small amount of wording with an international sign of a mask and saying please, because that's all we're asking is please, you know, help us take care of ourselves. I think that's the most patriotic thing you can do. I heard a radio host, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent again, but a radio host from middle Canada somewhere going, you know, people went off to war, volunteered to fight for our well-being. And, you know, that person said, you're only asking me to wear a mask to help, you know, the people in my community, the people in my country. I'll put it on in 2 minutes, but don't force it on me, right? So I think that was a pretty good comment, and I'm good with that.
Councillor McGrath.
Thank you very much. I agree with the recommendations that have been put forward to step up communications, to have entrance signs made that are bold. I wouldn't be as prescriptive as saying what they should say, because we have experts on staff that would be able to do a much better job than I on this. Definitely the piece with Parks Canada being a helper in communicating this message. And we do have the section of our website that is visiting Jasper, and really important to get our key messages out there too, as people, when they do travel, they certainly do look up our website for information. The key message that I think would go a long way is making sure that on our messaging, we say welcome back or welcome to Jasper, and we're happy to have you here. Certainly visiting other communities right now, you're not sure of what you'll get from the residents in the communities, and you're not sure on how it'll feel while you're there. So along the same lines of in the relaunch strategy of leaving little thank you for visiting us messages on cars through the enforcement officers, and a positivity campaign would be really welcomed for visitors to see a welcome message, but also our safety practices and procedures that we recommend on that same information.
All right, thank you all. I just want to add a thought, and I agree with the direction that council has suggested to administration, and that is greater awareness through signage and on the website, particularly the visitor part of the website, and looking for allies where we can find them, particularly through Parks Canada. But it seems to me that our greatest ally in all of this will be our residents and visitors who have common cause to remain healthy. And so I wondered whether we might solicit more assistance by having something that I would call the Jasper Community Safety Pledge, and just put it on our website. And it would be for either residents or visitors. And it would simply say, take the pledge, and the pledge is, I pledge to do my part to keep Jasper residents and visitors safe by wearing a mask in all public indoor and outdoor spaces at all times when maintaining physical distancing is not possible. And if you sign up, you get a little button that says, I took the pledge, and it's got a mask on it, or you get a sticker to put on the door of your store. And it just gets the word out that you can take a pledge. And then you're, I think, more likely to wear your mask. I mean, conscientious people are wearing their masks in any event, but if we get talk about making a pledge to keep Jasper residents and visitors safe, I think we pull in an awful lot of allies into the cause and broaden the word. So not that it changes any of the signage ideas or the educational, but it gives every individual an opportunity to join us in promoting awareness of wearing a mask. Councillor Demota?
I think that's a brilliant and insightful approach. I sign me up. I think that's great. Thank you for taking the time and putting thought into that. I'm a little concerned about social enforcement from people in the community, and we've already seen it happen during lockdown, people putting notes on vehicles and things like that. And I really think that out of every approach, this is the most proactive one. And if we can get the positive buy-in so that we don't have that social enforcement in town, because there are people that are really concerned, but if we can turn that from the ones that are feeling really negatively impacted by it and more of an educational approach and a buy-in approach, I think is really good. And I'm for supporting that. If we have the capability of doing that with our collective bodies, I'd really like to promote something like that. We don't have a lot of time, but I think it's worthwhile trying.
Anything else from councillors? Mr. Furcho, do you have enough direction to go on?
Your worship, if I might, I think for the purposes of clarity and record in the public meeting direction from council, I'll maybe ask Christine, like if we could summarize some wording that council directs administration to do certain things so that it's on the public record. Do you help, Christine, with some wording? Do you have something?
Thank you, Mr. Furcho, through the council. Just in order to ensure that administration can deliver on council's vision here, I would recommend that council maybe pass a motion to direct administration to develop an awareness campaign or develop a communications strategy. And then what comes next, I think, is quite key. I've heard some varying messages here in terms of if the idea is to promote mask wearing when maintaining physical distancing is difficult, is one thing. But if the direction from council is to promote mask wearing in all public places, that's sort of a different approach and an important distinction that I certainly would like a clarification on before we move ahead and develop some communications materials, which we can absolutely put our resources to it and develop internally, as long as we have clear direction from council. Thank you.
All right, well, we've all heard the same discussion. Does it distill to something easily transferable to a direction to administration? Councillor Demota?
No, I have, I actually, after we find out what our direction is, once we come to a conclusion on where we want to go, I have a request from you, and it has to do with the Economic Recovery Task Force, and I just, for some help there, and I think that we might be able to garner a little bit of support in a different way. But those comments would come after a direction that we want to take.
Thank you, Councillor Janot.
Thank you. I just have a proposal here, and some kind of summarizing what the mayor said, is that maybe just keep it simple. Please wear a mask when physical distancing is not possible. That applies at entrances to businesses. That applies if you're taking a taxi or whatever. I think it defines what the health authorities want us to do. When it's possible to be further away, you don't need to wear one. So maybe that's how we should corner or focus our message on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Janot. I was going to suggest, I'll go to Councillor McGrath.
I certainly can't speak for the group, but I would like to summarize the way that I would like communications or an education campaign to be worded. We already have the words respect physical distancing, which is beautifully worded. I think respect physical distancing should stay. Wear a mask indoors, outdoors when physical distancing is not possible. Be kind, respect others' boundaries, which was from our social media messaging that the municipality of Jasper has already put out. And happy to have you here, or welcome back to Jasper. And I don't think those words need to be specific, but a heading that encompasses the feeling of being welcomed into our community, with the physical distancing being respected, the mask wearing being strongly recommended, and the being kind and respecting others' boundaries and space are the pieces that I believe are really perfect for the large signage, as well as for the communication and education campaign. I think directing our administrative staff, such as Mr. Furcho, to ask Parks Canada if it's possible to have a communications message or a pamphlet shared with them at the park entrances would be fantastic. Signage in our entrances, and as I can't remember exactly who said it, but along the entrances of businesses as well, to include this communications message in a social media campaign on the Municipality of Jasper Facebook page, as well as in the visitor section of our municipality website, is the key parts that I caught that I would suggest putting in a motion.
Thank you for that, Councillor McGrath. Councillor Butler, had I seen your hand up?
Well, I was just going to, Councillor McGrath probably went where I was going to go. I was just going to propose some wording for a motion, which I can do, but maybe we're getting there already. I feel it's not necessary to be really specific about tone and type of messaging. I think we've discussed it enough, just the specific points of agreement, which Councillor McGrath ran through. But I think we have to respect administration's wish for a motion. So I'm willing to propose one if that's where you'd like to go, Your Worship.
I would like to go there. Councillor Demota, do you want to wait till there's a motion and then speak?
No, just from your approach too with the pledge program, would that be considered part of the motion? I think that was a good idea, but how do we how would we create or start something like that? Where would it need to start with a motion? Or I think maybe this is where I was kind of going in. If we have a collective effort with our agencies, even though it's an economic recovery task force, my biggest fear is that if we have a local outbreak and it gets to the point, and I know this is an extreme thing, but if we don't consider that we could have a local lockdown to get control of something, because a lot of the times the way this thing takes off is it doesn't really have an impact, until 2 weeks into it. And then it's like, holy smokes, this thing's got more of emotion than, was anticipated. So I know that that's an extreme approach, and I'd like to avoid that. So even though this is, there's an economic recovery task force, if there's no, if we don't have an economy here for the remainder of the summer, that could be a little bit more difficult to get through. So I would like to see if there could be some buy-in through that, and how could we collectively make an idea like that pledge program work in our community, not just have that solely based as a municipally driven thing. Because if we have collective buy-in from other agencies, we can get more support to just get good messaging out there. The last thing I want to do is ward off visitors, because we've seen how there's growing concerns that Banff's early approach with policing their entrances has really hurt them this summer. And I understand that, and the more I'm hearing and understanding a little bit more of it, that, I'm seeing that as something that could affect our community. And I don't want that here. So I think that we can have a better thing than just having signs and social media launches. So how would you promote something like that?
First, what I would like to do is get a motion on the table and see where we're at. And Councillor Butler was prepared to do that, I think. So I'm going to invite Councillor Butler, if you have something crafted there in front of you, to present a motion, and then if it needs debate or amendment, we can deal with that.
Sure, I'll propose some wording, and I don't mean to be overly prescriptive. I'm trying to capture what we said and completely open to friendly amendments. So I move that we direct administration to develop a COVID-19 health information campaign to include entry signage, that is meant to read town entry signage, signage for businesses and other indoor public spaces. Point 2. Point 3 would be leaflets to be distributed at park gates if Parks Canada is willing. Point 4 would be to develop a Take the Pledge program. Your Worship, you had some better words than that, but I'm talking about what you mentioned. And to ensure that communications include strong recommendation for masks in indoor public spaces and masks where physical distancing is not possible, and messages of welcome and thanks. Period.
Thank you for that. Councillor McGrath.
The only friendly amendment that I would have to offer, that was excellent, Councillor Butler, thank you, would be to add in the Visiting Jasper section of our municipal website to include this information as well.
If I could respond, I have no objection to that, but I actually felt we could leave it to administration to determine where else, so we could make message of social media and other communication avenues. I didn't mean to imply that the listing was exclusive, so I certainly agree with using any and all opportunities, including website and social media.
Thank you. Councillor Journeau.
Well, I like to keep it simple, and I think communication should be simple. And go back to combining some of the comments that were made before. I think if we say masks are strongly recommended, people will look at that and say, yeah, strongly recommended. I think in summation, I would like to see welcome, that was mentioned by Councillor McGrath. Please wear a mask when distancing is not possible. If that's seen everywhere, it's pretty straightforward, it's pretty clear, and I think that's what we want.
Fair enough. Thank you for that. I think the motion was to include the word strongly recommend. So I think if it changes to please, that is not a friendly amendment. It changes the tenor of the motion. So I'd leave that to Councillor Butler, but I would not think, I mean, you're certainly welcome, Councillor Journeau, to propose an amendment to the motion to have it read please rather than strongly recommend. But I don't see that as a friendly amendment unless the mover is prepared to accept it as one. Councillor Butler.
You know, that my intent here is not to micromanage administration. I trust the people who would be putting this together, that they are good at developing communications, and I didn't want to start to get into here's the phrase or we should use these words. If it's felt that it's best to use the word we strongly recommend versus please wear masks, I think that the team can sit down and work that sort of thing out, and I have deliberately avoided specifying exact wording, or we'll be writing this thing ourselves over the next 8 hours, and I don't want to do that.
All right.
So no, I'm not accepting a friendly amendment in that respect. Thank you.
All right. Before I either accept other comments about the motion or pose the question, I would like to hear from administration as to whether or not there is sufficient clarity in the motion that was made that is now on the table. So, Ms. Nadon, you're out there somewhere. If you could tell us whether that motion would be sufficient for administrative purposes, I welcome your response.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I appreciate the crafting by councillors. The point I was trying to make earlier is the difference between following current health guidelines, which means when it's difficult to maintain a 2-meter physical distance from others, masks are encouraged, is the provincial messaging at this time. If council wishes to take a step further and suggest that mask wearing should be encouraged in all public places, to me, that is the policy difference in the approach. And that's what I was looking for clarity on in terms of a motion. And the additional wording that is in there does support our work. So it's good in that sense. But the clarity on, are we sticking with the provincial message, or are we taking it a step further and suggesting that in all public places, masks should be worn, is the direction from council that I would like to be clear on.
As I understood Councillor Butler's motion, it would be indoor spaces and outdoor spaces where physical distancing cannot be maintained. Councillor Butler, is that a fair summation of your motion?
It is. I think I had said mask wearing is strongly recommended in indoor public spaces and where physical distancing is difficult. I may have said not possible. I would prefer difficult. But I was specific in indoor public spaces and elsewhere where physical distancing is difficult.
Thank you. I'm sorry,
Thank you. If I may just, that is the clarity that was needed, just as long as council is aware that that is a step further than the public health guidelines. But again, it's in a communications format and not attempting to go through legislation. So all good. That is the clarity I needed. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Demota, and then Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I was okay with supporting that theory, much like Parks Canada doesn't wait for the province to tell them when it's okay to start putting in fire bans and stuff, because they know better what's going on locally, and the province can't really put a blanket statement out there that's going to help protect resort municipalities like ours. So I think that, you know, Councillor Butler's messaging and that approach to take it to another level, You know, although not legislated, I think that, you know, the message out there, we're in a little different predicament right now. So I believe that, you know, taking a further step is important in understanding.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson, welcome.
Yeah, so just catching up here. How does that take us a further step? Isn't this what the provincial government is suggesting anyway? Wearing masks inside is strongly recommended, I think, as well as masks when you can't physically distance. How does it take us any further than that? And there's no real kind of backing behind this, right? So if we're going to make a motion, shouldn't it, you know, give some type of enforcement, or why are we doing this in the first place, I guess?
The motion is intended to direct administration to enhance public awareness through a communications campaign on social media and elsewhere, just to help get the message out. Because the thought is that even though we're not significantly changing the message from the province, it is not getting the attention that council believes it deserves, and a communications plan will enable us to get the message out better. Not a different message in any critical area, but just an enhanced message of the same tone is the intent. And the motion is to give some clear direction to administration so they can set upon the steps necessary to put that communications plan in motion.
I guess the one thing that I don't think this has is any kind of enforcement that businesses can use, right? So if we're just, you know, again, suggesting that we are strongly recommending, businesses still can't use it as, no, please, we feel that you should be wearing a mask in our business. We'd like you to leave because we don't feel comfortable. But they could still, you know, individuals could still argue that, unfortunately. So if we want it to actually have some type of enforcement, shouldn't we be moving it a little bit further? You know, I recognize, yeah, maybe we should be doing some type of social messaging, but you know, we're kind of inundated with that from the province, so it's really redundant, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Demota.
Yeah, so like we started off last week with the mandatory approach proposal because it was happening in other areas. So from a lot of discussions in the community last week, we've discussed that an enforcement thing would be a hindrance to our visitors. So from what we understand, we're trying to really look at the best possible way before something like that comes in to communicate a positive buy-in message. So there were a lot of things discussed, and right now making something mandatory and as far as an angle of enforcement goes, much of what I've discovered into talking to businesses and their representatives is that the businesses that are taking matters into their own hands and working within the parameters of what's recommended is working well so far within their establishments. And from what I understand, they don't want to be told what to do right now. So I think that the approach that we've discussed and that Councillor Butler's motion covers is the next best step to take. That's just my opinion, and I would like to see it go this way before any extreme measures have to come into play.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath.
Also, just to fill you in, Councillor Wilson, we started agenda topic 8.1 with the framework of mandatory masking in public spaces. So Mr. Furcho gave us a legal update, and we followed with kind of our stances on mandatory masking, and it seemed as though there was consensus from all council present at the time to move in more of the strongly recommended wording versus mandatory. So that's the only piece that you missed before joining the conversation, where it became a little softer than mandation and enforcement.
Any other comments from councillors? Councillor Journeau?
Thank you. And with all due respect, Councillor Wilson, I don't think the province is doing enough. You're saying the province is inundating us. I don't see that at all. I don't see any radio advertising. Well, of course, we don't get much radio here, but certainly don't get any newspaper or TV advertising. I don't think the province is doing enough. And I think it's entirely appropriate for our community to come up with an enhanced communication program to encourage mask wearing. I really don't think the province is doing enough, to be honest with you.
Councillor Wilson?
Okay, thank you. Well, just a follow-up question, I guess, just to fill myself in. Were there suggestions on how we're reaching our visitors? You know, because we're definitely going to reach our community members through social media, etc. But what are the measures to reach our visitors with the message?
Councillor McGrath?
So this motion that Councillor Butler has on the table explains that we would have signage available for businesses. The entrances, the 3 entrances of town would have designed signage. We would have leaflets designed by administration that would hopefully be administered as well by Parks Canada at the gates. We would enhance our communications, including our website. And Mayor Ireland suggested a safety pledge where we develop a campaign for ourselves to take a pledge and share that widely.
Councillor Demota?
Yeah, I wasn't sure when Councillor Wilson kind of popped in there, and I know that when you leave a conversation in a meeting and there's a question on the table, so maybe we should, if he's allowed to vote on this one and wants to, I think that we should have the motion read again in its entirety, and then, because I'd like to have his input too, and I think that's important. Thanks for making it.
Well, I was about to call the question without actually restating it, because I'm not sure that I could, but Councillor Butler might be able to restate the motion. And then before I call the question, I will ask if anybody else has any further comments. Councillor Butler, please.
Sure, thank you. Thank you. I'll just speak to one concern that Councillor Wilson raised before I reread the motion, and that is to the question of enforcement. My motion is just an attempt to capture the tenor of the conversation that we've had. If any councillor wants to move, to put a motion on the table in the direction of a bylaw or any other mandated effort, I will cheerfully withdraw this motion, but I think it was quite clear through our conversation that no one wanted to put such a motion on the table, so we went down the road of a communications plan. But if Councillor Wilson or anyone else wants to move in the direction of a bylaw, I would withdraw this so that we could have that discussion again, but I believe we already had that discussion. So the motion is worded to direct administration to develop a COVID-19 health campaign, including town entry signage, signage for businesses and indoor public spaces, leaflets to be distributed at park gates if Parks Canada is willing, a take the pledge program as described by Mayor Ireland at this meeting. That last bit is in parentheses, isn't part of the motion. Website and social media, and to ensure communications include strongly recommend masks in indoor public spaces and where physical distancing is difficult, and messages of welcome and thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Butler. One last call for debate. If not, then I will call the question. All in favor? There appear to be none opposed. That motion is carried. So, Ms. Nadon, I trust that you have the information that you require.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship and Council.
All right, that takes us to agenda item 9, request for decision. The decision, first one for today, not indicated, but 9.1, I presume, reopening of the fitness center. Mr. Furcho?
Your worship, thank you. So I'll ask our Director of Culture and Rec and our Director of Finance to be available as well. But if you want to go ahead on this one, please. I'm not sure if she's having some audio trouble here. Just a sec.
Is that better? Okay, perfect.
On. Yeah, thank you.
Let's try that again. So at the last meeting, I brought forward a motion for opening the fitness center and the climbing wall. There was a few questions that were asked by council members, particularly, I believe, the mayor, and I'm just trying to find that last question. I can answer one and then finance can answer the other. Well, possibly answer. Sorry, my phone just rang, so my message was deleted.
Maybe.
So one of the questions that came forward was how resident booking times would affect income from visitors trying to pay for use. It's a really difficult question to answer, but what I have found just over the last few days since we've been taking call-ins and recording what facilities they're looking for is the majority of the people are calling in. So they're calling in to find out if we're open, they're calling in to find out what's open, if they can get a shower, if they can use the fitness center. So I don't think it's going to be as much of a challenge as we think with having people book a time to come into the fitness center or to be able to work around that. They seem to be just anxious to be able to get in and use our facilities or to have a shower. With regards to the rest of the fitness center opening, I just wanted to highlight that right now there's a lot of other communities in the same boat that we're in exactly the same boat. And what's happening is a good number of them are opening up in phases, very similar to what we're requesting. So, you know, they're starting with the low fruit and expanding from that to more complex fitness centers or activity centers or swimming pools. So they're starting with fitness centers because that's a fairly easy one to open. It's easy to make the distancing. It's a little bit, you know, there are some complex things about booking, but it's easier to do. So I have noticed that there's several communities. We've got Hinton that's starting their schedule for reopening. We've got Edson, we've got Camrose, Stettler. So there's quite a few towns that are already phasing in their facilities to being open to the public. And then the finance question, I believe that Natasha can answer.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. Yes, the mayor had suggested that he would like to hear the savings that occurred within the fitness and aquatic center over the past 3 months. So from March 15th to June 30th. And I did send out an email with the details behind it. But just to allude to it a bit more, the fitness and aquatic center, if you just want to think about the expense side of it, then yes, there was less expenditures in the amount of $150,000. But if you want to also look at the revenue lost, we lost $225,000. So therefore, if you're considering the net, it would have been an additional cost to be closed during this time, is basically where we're sitting at with the Fitness and Aquatic Center. And I also sent some numbers on the Activity Center because that is coming up next, but we can talk about that in the next request for decision. But that was a question that was brought up. So I did the analysis from March 15th to June 30th from 2019 and 20. And that is the amount that would cost us extra based on the amount that we lost and saved ultimately through the expenses. Thank you.
Thank you both for that additional work to answer those questions. I certainly appreciate the information that's been provided. Is there anything further with respect to the reports, Mr. Furcho, before I turn it to council?
Your Worship, Yvonne has her virtual hand up, and I know you can't see that on your screen. So if you want, Yvonne.
I noticed a facial expression that was given with the cost of the opening of the fitness center, and right now that there are expenses that are exceeding. What you have to remember with the fitness center, with the aquatic center, you still have a building. You're still paying for heating, for lighting, for maintenance. Even though the building is not being used, there are still costs going into that building. So it's not like closing the doors of an apartment where you can turn the water off, you can turn your heat off, and you can let it go all summer and not have any bills come in. Right now, we're still getting bills in because we're needing to keep the heat on to an extent. We've got everything turned down that we possibly can, but there's still maintenance on the building. There's still leaks in the roof. There's things like that that we're dealing with.
Thank you, Mrs. McNabb. Councillors, Councillor McGrath.
Thank you. Mr. Furcho through to Ms. Malinchuk. Would you help me understand why the revenue from March 15th to June 30th for 2020 is a negative $21,000 when I would just possibly even just unknowingly assume that a revenue would be zero versus a negative 21,000. So can I have some clarity perhaps on how to see this differently?
Yes, Your Worship, through to Councillor McGrath. As you would note above, in the accounting world, all the revenues are in the negative. So if you look at the full line, we account for them as a negative for the budget, for instance, of 2020, 78,500. And then the revenue, so it's actually a positive number. It's the way that it's formulated so that you can, I don't know how to explain it perfectly, but that's how we lay it out in the accounting world. It's just, even though it's a negative, it's actually a positive. So there is 21,170 that was brought in from March 15th to June 30th.
Tash, I could just say it's done that way so the bottom line number of an expenditure by department is not a negative number, it's a positive number. So everything's somewhat, in layman's terms, everything's reversed.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Journeau, did I see your hand up?
Yes, you did. Thank you. When I look at the request for decision, there's three options, and I think that we should be considering the third option at this time. I don't think we should be reopening this fitness center. It's mainly the target here is for adults. Adults can easily use the outdoors until the colder weather. If we were to do anything to provide taxpayers' dollars, it'd be for children, but we're not. We're doing it for adults. So consequently, I propose that this be delayed. And I have a motion here that I'd like to present which is be it resolved that council direct administration to develop an alternative proposals for reopening the fitness center climbing wall with a reopening date after Thanksgiving in October of this year, and to bring forward a request for decision in September.
Thank you, Councillor Journeau. I have recorded your motion as best I can. I hope that some of our staff have perhaps done a better job. It's your motion. Did you want to speak to it further first before I open to debate from other councillors?
Well, basically what I said before is that, this is for adults, and I think that, they can easily accomplish all of their fitness requirements, or 80% of them anyways, in the beautiful outdoors that we have and enjoy the scenery. And if we're going to provide taxpayers' dollars for recreation fitness, I'd certainly like to be seeing it for children instead. But delaying it for 2 months to me is appropriate. They can use the outdoors for climbing, and there's a lot of facilities, but come the fall, the frost gets in and it's not as safe, and that's when we should be considering reopening our facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson?
I think we should be moving forward with this sooner rather than later. I think we're leaders in the community as the municipality. Every business is struggling with dealing with ways to open, their challenges. I think we should be doing the same. It's going to be difficult. We're going to have to operate our business a little bit different than normal, but every other business in our community has had to do the same. And for us to just sit back and just watch to see what happens and not participate in the community, I think is wrong. I think we should be moving forward, reopening our services that people depend on in our community, but also our visitors that expect. And I think we should be offering these services to entice people to come and visit, and we should be offering them in a modified manner, and we should be setting the bar. We're ready to open up again, as we expect all our other businesses to open up again with safety measures in mind. I really think that we can't just hold back and watch and expect everybody else to open and have their challenges where we just sit back and just not offer anything. It's not becoming.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Demota?
Well, just to aid in that conversation for Mr. Wilson, Councillor Wilson, last week I put forward 2 motions. One of them was to review this again at the beginning of August, just because there is a spike in Alberta right now with COVID cases, and pretty much across the board except for one region. And so there was a little bit concern about council on opening up too early, and I fully agree with you. And I think that we have been opening up our services and progressively growing out of this. That got defeated because it was a 3-3 split, and then I put another motion in, which was initially going to be presented by another council, that we review it at the end of July. So because things change every week, so at the end of this month things could be looking a little better. That got defeated. I was the only one that voted in favor of that. So I think that we should be looking at it on a month-to-month basis going forward to see where we're at to help our community out. And I know right now there is the perception that, once bitten, twice shy. I think that if we're opening it up, it might not be for the majority of the community. So fiscally, we have to look at things that way. And I'm for looking at it, but not taking the extreme of saying shut it down until October, because I think that there's a lot of value in opening up things in phases, but I think it's too early at this point from my point of view.
Comments from other councillors? Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. In regards to the fitness facility reopening, it's once again another complex issue that has so many different perspectives to consider, and I sit fairly neutral in the subject. I think that obviously the wellness of our residents is is of utmost importance, and the safety for our residents should be our guiding factor here. And of course, we were all equally surprised when phase 3 subjects like the fitness and the pool and the arena were moved from phase 3 to phase 2, and it came quicker than many of us were ready for, as well as the private sector included. I visited a hotel yesterday where their facilities were not yet available because they're not yet ready to offer those services to the patrons. And I think there's lots to be considered in the fact that cases in Alberta are on the rise once again, and we discussed this at length last week. And I'm sensitive to that. I'm also aware of the community members that feel as though we have enough to do in the summer months, and that it is more of a fall aspect when we should be considering reopening. And one of the letters, I believe, that is attached, yes, agenda item 10.1 that's attached today. And I'm feeling myself more and more in that direction of making a call and making a decision today, because from what I know of athletes that train and participants in the recreation and wellness area, is that they've had access to recreation right now, and they need to plan, and they need to plan around a date. So finding out a date, regardless of when that date is really important for our training schedule for athletes, and for finding alternate activities to do in the meantime. So I am pretty much leaning towards, I say, early October start date, as Mrs. Jenkins mentioned in agenda item 10.1. But I'm very sensitive to the issue of making sure that our residents have what they need to be well.
Councillor Keller-Hrampe.
I feel because we're in Jasper and there's so much for everybody to do here versus some of the other small towns. But yesterday I was listening to the manager for Edmonton City, and he was saying that they're opening their facilities, but no shower areas will be open, that people can come to the gym, use the gym, leave. So because it's unsafe and they have no way to control those areas. So like Councillor McGrath and Councillor Genome, we discussed this at length last week. For me, it's the safety and the rise, and we're already saying that we need to wear masks, we need to have more masks, we need to have more safety in town. So I think we really need to gauge what's going to happen here in the next 6 weeks, because the schools are out now, we're having more and more visitors. I think it would be good when the kids go back to school. They have a month in school, make sure nothing rises from that the children are healthy, the adults in town are healthy, and then move forward to open up. But I am very concerned about the rise of COVID. And I'm very concerned because, as we said about earlier in conversations, that we have visitors coming in from all over. And last week we're talking about mandatory masks, but we want to open all our facilities. Like, we're starting to open slowly. Our administration office opened yesterday. Our FCS office is not opened yet. They're opened on appointment one by one. So to just totally open the activities, the gym and the kind of mall, I'm really concerned because we're taking it so cautiously in other areas, but yet we want to open this to the visitors and the public. I really think we need to take our time for the safety aspect.
Thank you, Councillor Keller-Hrampe. Other councillors? Councillor Butler? Councillor Butler, you'll have to unmute, please.
Sorry, thank you. I share the concerns of other councillors around health issues. I am quite worried about what I expect, and I think we are all concerned that there could turn out to be a rise in infection rates. Areas where things have been opened up significantly have resulted in some fairly disturbing statistics. I also have other concern that one of the problems is that our costs to operate this facility skyrocket, partly because of the extra measures we have to take. My primary concern is around health, and I think we should wait in that respect. But I'm also concerned about a proposal that looks at $170,000 in costs for about 170 days of operation. And, you know, as little as, I think even that is optimistic, $30,000 of income, that's a 17% cost recovery rate. So I just don't see how it's responsible to look at that at this time. So I think Councillor Journeau's date is late, Thanksgiving, but I also think that we need to be decisive and state a date. I'm not convinced that the fitness center is an important attractant for visitors. I don't think people come to Jasper or stay away relative to a fitness center. And I'm completely not convinced by the need to provide showers for visitors. And I have a sense from what has been reported that a lot of the requests are about that. And I'm just not convinced that that is a community need that we should honestly be concerning ourselves with. So I'm concerned at it being so late, but I'm prepared to promote the motion that has been put forward.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. I appreciate those comments and bringing it back to the fiscal responsibility argument. I also want to express my thanks to staff for following the template that council set out. So this matter is before us because the province has indicated as part of its relaunch strategy that facilities such as this can open. And it's, I agree, I appreciate the concern about safety, but from the outset of this pandemic, this council has taken the position that we would follow the provincial public health directives with respect to safety. And so the province now has said it is safe to do this. And they are as aware of any increase in COVID-19 cases around the province as are we. And yet the authority that we have recognized from the outset has said it's all right, given that we can implement the necessary safety mitigations. And our staff know what those are. And from what we've heard from administration is that in this type of facility, it is easier to implement those mitigations than it would be in other facilities. And the demand for service, although it's not a perfect reflection, there seems to be a demand. And so it's not quite the same as some of our other services, as Councillor Keller-Empey pointed out, that aren't yet open, because it's not the same demand to go to our administrative offices, which opened yesterday, or even FCS. More of that can be done online and on the phone, but you can't get your work out that way. And so there are people who wish to resume a healthy lifestyle, and this is part of that. So the question then remains, is it fiscally responsible for us to open? Because I can't see on the other arguments that we are there. They seem to have been all addressed. So the fiscal responsibility question is the one that drives us. And yes, these facilities cost money, but they have always cost money. And that's what local government's about. It's about providing services, and they're paid for by the public because they're services that they want. We were very quick, I thought, to open playgrounds when the opportunity arose. We were quick to reopen the daycare when the opportunity arose, following what the province allowed. So I am torn, and I can see that there are issues, and safety has to be foremost. That's why we talked about masking. And yet, are we going to position ourselves to be the arbiter of when it is safe? If we're going to do that, we must do it in all things. And I'm not sure that we should be picking and choosing. So I would like to see a date. I think October is not realistic, and I appreciate that we have the great outdoors and I use them, and I'm not a gym user in particular, but others who are. And there seems to be a growing demand. I could see perhaps at the end of summer, at least consistent with school reopening, But the motion is to open after Thanksgiving. I do not favor that. I might be able to tolerate some delay based on the economic realities, but I would not support waiting at least until after Thanksgiving and not even returning to the question until September. I think that we should target a date, perhaps at the end of summer, would be my view. Councillor Keller-Granby?
Last week, I had proposed, following the long weekend in September when the kids go back to school, to opening the activity center at that time. That's what was one of the dates that was thrown out there last week. And I would be prepared to make a friendly amendment to Councillor Jeannot for that date.
And I'm sorry, that date being the Tuesday after the long weekend in September?
There's September 8th.
Councillor Jeannot, that's proposed as a friendly amendment.
It's a little bit more than friendly.
Fair enough.
It's stretching the boundary. I was prepared to relent on the Thanksgiving date and go to the date that's recommended by the letter writer of October 1st. So we'll see what the rest of the discussion brings.
Thank you. Councillor Demota, and then Councillor Wilson, did I see your hand again? Councillor Demota?
Yeah, like, you know, end of summer is kind of vague. So are we looking at, you know, the autumn solstice, or are we looking at, or would that be the equinox? Anyway, I'm just saying that, are we looking at, you know, mid to later December, or you know, I kind of like the idea of setting a date. I think that's important. So maybe the 8th. I'm not sure if that really helps administration get everything set up properly, because you don't want people working through the long weekend to get it open for the 8th. So if they can do that during the week. But I think if Councillor Jeannot wants to put his motion to see, you know, where it goes, I recommend that, if that's the motion you want to put forward. I don't want to put someone in a position to have a friendly amendment. I like the idea of waiting till after Labor Day. So I would pick a date somewhere after that. So if the 8th is a good idea, with the understanding that if it is still, you know, within the best regards for our community health-wise and fiscally responsible. I'm not saying we're going to open on the 8th. So I would look at something going, because we might get a second wave, other things could happen. It could go in the complete opposite direction and we could be ready to open earlier. So I'm not making a friendly amendment. I'm just saying that, you know, I don't think we should push it back that far. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just for clarity, the motion as I have imperfectly recorded it is a motion that we will not reopen until after Thanksgiving, but the matter will return for a decision by council in September. I'm not sure when in September, but that was the motion. Councillor Wilson.
For me, I think all those dates are a little bit too far in the future. Again, like I said earlier, I feel like the municipality should participate in reopening and relaunching our community. Although I would get behind Councillor McGrath, or sorry, Keller-Granby's Labor Day, after Labor Day for the fitness center. But I think we should launch both of facilities at the same time, like separating those two fiscally, I think, you know, is good, so we can see them in different lights. But I think that's really, that facility is one of, you know, in its own. I think we should launch both of those at the same time. I could get behind the 8th. could definitely not get behind anything further into the future than that.
Councillor McGrath?
I too, if it was the will of council, would agree to a date of September 8th.
All right, well, we have a motion before us. And Councillor Journeau, it's your motion. I'll let you close debate.
Well, clearly this date is not being supported. So, and I mean, I've heard too many options. I'm willing to change the date. That's not the problem. Selecting the date appears to be a bit difficult because some of the comments that are made here is like 5 weeks earlier than what I expected. My concern is I would not want to see an early September opening because that's when school starts. I think that there's going to be some events around school opening and the confinement and all of that. And I think that we should give that some time before we start opening our facilities. I sort of agree with Councillor Wilson that we should open at the same time. However, that's a big undertaking. My concern is we're reopening for adults and we're not doing anything for kids. So in that sense, I agree with Councillor Wilson. But again, because of the events of safety and so on and so forth, the letter recommended October 1st. Nobody supported that. I still find early September to be too early because we should wait to see what the events of school reopening can bring about from a safety point of view. So I'd be prepared to change the date before we vote on this, but I have just seen too much parameters here. The letter recommends October 1st. I'm willing to go along with that. I invite discussion. Thank you.
Well, I suppose that is the most friendly of amendments, an amendment moved by the mover of the motion to change it from after Thanksgiving to October 1st. I could call the question on that basis. So would your motion then be, Councillor Journeau, an amended motion to open on October 1st and still return for a further decision, or would that be a decision made now? Because your motion initially was in two parts, to return to the question in September.
I'm not sure where we're at here. Excuse me. I think Councillor Butler and Councillor Demota have got some suggestion. Maybe they can help me.
Thank you, Councillor Demota.
So the Grand Yellowhead Public School Division is first day of school states the 3rd of September. So that's a Tuesday, Thursday. Yeah, so if you're saying wait a couple of weeks, would Councillor Journeau, would like September 14th? I kind of agree. Once you said that, it kind of made sense to me that, you know, maybe we should see what rolls out of people going back to school and using public spaces that way. And I'm interested in maybe looking at a fallout from that.
Councillor McGrath.
Just to follow up for information purposes, the first day of school is slated to be September 7th, September 8th, the day after Labor Day. But the school division won't be announcing anything for their September plans until August 1st is the plan, where parents will find out what September will look like for their children.
Councillor Butler, your name was mentioned, but I may have missed your hand. But
thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I was just tapping into the conversation around the idea of a couple of weeks after school goes back in. School goes back in, I think, on the 8th, though even that is still a soft date. And Councillor Demota suggested, I mean, maybe honestly a little tongue in cheek because it's the formal end of summer, the 21st, but that also is 2 weeks after thereabouts after school goes back in. And I guess I wondered what, since we seem to be looking at dates, I wondered what Councillor Journeau would think about that date as maybe a compromise between what some are wanting, which is maybe around the 1st of September, and what he would like, which is around the 1st of October. So I wondered about that. And the other point I wanted to make is I think that Councillor Journeau's suggestion was clear that it would come back for review and decision, because we would still, I think, only responsibly have to look at, you know, the cost recovery formulation at that time. But we could at least give administration a notional idea when we would be prepared to consider reopening.
Councillor Demota?
Well, I think that Ruben was iterating that he supports the vernal equinox, and I got support here as well because my dog knows Paul's dog's bark. I think, yeah, that it was kind of tongue in cheek, but you know, that might be a better date. I know we're just talking about a couple of weeks here, and you know, I think to some, if they're probably thinking that if you're going to wait till September 21st, you might as well wait till the end of Thanksgiving. But again, I'd like to review it on a monthly basis. I know that got defeated, but I think that, you know, if the opportunity is there and it's safe to open and we see a decrease in, you know, cases arising in Alberta, then, you know, we should look at that. And I think it helps promote well-being and community health in our community. And I think that pushing it back could, you know, just cause some frustration. And I want to be able to assist in both, not promote frustration.
Councillor Keller-Granthey?
I think we need to make a clear decision. I think the public, our residents, our children, everybody, our staff needs to know what we're moving forward with. I like the idea of Councillor Wilson, and Councillor Journeau also agreed with it, to open both the aquatic centre and the activity centre at the same time. Therefore, I could support, like, I get it that, and I have talked to some parents and they were saying that it'd be nice to know that the kids are back in school before I allow them. We're even seeing with the daycare, even though it's open, we're not getting a lot of children. Parents are afraid. So therefore, I would support September 21 for both facilities, the activity centre and the aquatic centre, to open at the same time.
But right now, there is no motion to that effect just yet. Councillor Journeau?
Okay, I missed some of the audio here. There was a cutout here, but I propose to amend my motion to the September 21st opening, with the review to come back to council for the decision on the financial part of it September 1st. So that'll be 3 weeks before the facility open. It should be enough time for that. So just talking about a September 21st reopening. Whether administration can reopen both facilities on that day, I think that might be difficult. So maybe the 21st, and the other one a week later. But I leave that up to administration. But for the fitness and aquatic center, or fitness and climbing wall facility, September 21st reopening.
With the matter coming back for confirmation on September 8th?
September 1st.
Correct, sorry. All right, I am going to say that we have a motion, which is that the fitness center and climbing wall plan for reopening for September 21st, with a confirming decision to be made by council on September 1st. Is that correct? I see a thumbs up. So that is the motion. That is the question which I will call. All in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. All right, thank you for that. That will take us to agenda item, I guess it would be 9.2, which is just here by way of notice, but may have substantially been addressed in any event. That is the reopening of the Aquatic Center, proposed for September 1st, but with a decision on July 21st, so 2 weeks hence. So we've had much discussion already about perhaps combining those two openings, the fitness center and climbing wall, with the aquatic center. The information is here for the request for decision. Is there any additional information which council will require prior to July 31st, or any clarification that's required today? Mr. Furcho?
Your Worship, I'm going to leave my camera off when I'm not speaking. The internet's quite slow. So the fitness center, like if we have a planned date for reopening, 3 weeks notice for staff is pretty tight for recall and reopening, and certainly to bring a report back for reopening of the pool with only 3 weeks notice, like, because we can't confirm the rehire of staff till 3 weeks before the opening date, certainly wouldn't be appropriate for the pool. So before we get into that discussion, I think with the fitness center, it'll be tight, but with the pool, it wouldn't be possible.
All right, well, but the pool reopening is scheduled for decision on July 7th in any event, with a proposed opening date of September 1st. It certainly doesn't sound like it's going to be accelerated. So that timing should still work for administration, should it not?
That's correct. It's just like if we get into the discussion about having a return date, like we just did with the fitness center, I just wanted to put a caution out there that there is much more involved in restarting a pool, even with the fitness center, for rehiring and recalling staff back and making sure that they're back up to certification, everything they need. It takes a little time.
All right, thank you for that. Is there anything else from council then regarding the notice of the reopening of the aquatic center? If not, we can move to the next agenda item, which is electronic vehicle charging center, although we've been at things for almost 2 hours. Does council require any sort of a recess? Councillor Keller-Hempe, you would favor one? All right, last time I called one for 5 minutes and was told that was too short, but we're nearly done our agenda. So let's say 9 minutes, 3:25, we'll reconvene. And I will call recess until then. To order, we are at agenda 9.3, electronic vehicle charging center for Jasper and Mr. Furcho.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'll get started. So in terms of the proposal that's in front of you in the report, I'll just maybe do a little bit of an introduction and go over electric vehicle charging, just for the purposes of getting everybody on the same page. So what we've talked about many times with council, and part of council's strategic priorities, is promoting electric vehicle charging in Jasper. And in some major centers and in some places, there are EV chargers on commercial properties. And in terms of Jasper, one of the things council can do is look at the allowance of EV chargers on public land until such a time in the future that EV chargers become more commercially viable. At this point, they're marginally so in Jasper, if not so much. And I'll talk a bit more about that shortly here. So what we were looking for is just maybe a transitional use of land for about a maximum of 15 years to facilitate EV charging becoming more common in Jasper. So I'm just going to bring something up on the screen here. I had it available, but now I'm not so sure. I don't even know if I should try this. Okay. Can you see that image of the chargers, the plugs?
No.
No. Huh. My goodness, why is today got to be like this? This is. How about that? Did that work?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on with my system today. It's just not working very well. Before we get into the types of chargers and charging in electric vehicles, I thought we'd just go over the basics on electric vehicle chargers. So there's level 1, level 2, and level 3. So level 1 is basically just plugging your car in at your house using your normal plug-ins. Depending on how much the vehicle is discharged, it can take anywhere from, most of a day to a couple days to charge a car at a very low, slow trickle charger. And there really is no vehicle special plug at that point. You're just using your normal outlet. And the vehicles come with adapters that allow you to plug in at home. Level 2 is what is fairly common and used a lot. That's you charge in 3 to 8 hours, about is what it says, but it really depends on the amount of charge the vehicle has when you come to the site. A lot of places you'll see the vehicle sitting on the charger for the whole day. So there are some of these in Jasper Park Lodge, the Saw Ridge Inn. We've put some on the backside of, we put one on the backside of the library that was $23,000. And really, there's 2 types of plugins at the level 2 level for vehicles. There is the RV charger that you can use an adapter for, but that's not typically what the cars use. So it's either the J1772, which is kind of the, for lack of a better term, the more universal charger. And that's what we put on the library. And Tesla can also plug into those with an adapter. And the Tesla plug is the other type of plug on a level 2. And other vehicles can't plug into the Tesla because on a networked system, if it wasn't networked, they might, but with a networked system, it only works with Tesla vehicles. Once you get to the level 3, those are the ones that people with electric vehicles plan their travel around. And there's different styles of level 3 in terms of how much capacity in kilowatts they have for charging a car. Some can take around an hour, but some of the bigger units can be far less than an hour. And depending again on the amount of charge in a vehicle. So the 3 types of plugs are really, Tesla is the main one. About 60% or more of the vehicles out there are Tesla. And so Tesla is the most common at the level 3. The other 2, you can see in the list there, one is more for the Asian and one is for the US and European. So the CCS is getting to be one of the most common ones out there. The CHAdeMO a little less so, but there are vehicles that use those. So the CCS and the CHAdeMOs are typically on the same charger. You can use one or the other. The Tesla has the ability to use the one with an adapter as well. But by having sort of all 3, you have all of those units available. So that's, in a nutshell, electric vehicle charging 101. And really, so we do have the level 2s available in Jasper, and there is some discussion around, well, that way a vehicle stays longer, but really what happens is a vehicle sits on there for most of the day, if not the whole day, on one charger, and it's unable to be used by others. And then those with electric vehicles can't plan a route really with those. If they're on a hotel, they're fine, but for planning routes for travel, it's really the level 3s that we're talking about trying to use for attracting that traffic through. And I'll just stop the share there. And so I'll just get into this a little bit more. So as I said, we do have these at the hostel has one on Sleepy Hollow Road. They've got 2 of those 1772s, the level 2s. The high school has one, status is unknown on that. Sawridge and JPL have Teslas and 1772s. Last week we saw a proposal on the level 3 charger from Edson for a regional initiative. We also have the proposal from Tesla here, and we've looked at this in the past as a municipality, and the capital cost for one level 3 charger was around $120,000. And then there's also the cost of the transmission, which is having that wire with that capacity going to that unit, just sitting there, which is about $1,100 a month, even if it's not being used, that we have to pay to have that thing sitting there, plus the cost of electricity if somebody actually charges it. So those are all costs that we need to be aware of. And so we removed the capital budget item for the level 3 chargers from this year's capital budget. So what's being proposed here now is by Tesla, that we did have a proposal from in the past, is if they can apply for that government grant. The federal government has a grant opportunity, and I'll just point out to council, if you recall, we did apply for it for the past 2 years. We have been unsuccessful in getting that grant for bringing a level 3 charger to Jasper. So although I want to be supportive of Tesla applying on our behalf with us, we have applied 2 years running and been unsuccessful. So whether or not that works, that's another story. And then we also have, if you look at the correspondence items in the report, a letter from ZAP with Electric Vehicle Charger Networks. And I did phone them to find out what their proposal might be for the purposes of this discussion. And it was similar to what might be proposed from Edson at first, where they would go for that grant as well, and then there would be a capital cost sharing plus the other sharing of costs. And I advised that we don't currently have the capital budget for that. So then they said if they could apply for the grant, if council would be supportive, then they would be able to take a run at making it work as well for no cost to the municipality. So if we look at this, I think when I was looking at the recommendations again, perhaps if council, first of all, signals if there's an intention to move forward with the concept of having an EV charging center in Jasper on municipal land in that parking lot across from Robinson's, that would be one thing. And secondly, if council would signal the intention of being supportive of these different opportunities out there, including the Tesla one, then authorizing the mayor and CAO into entering into agreements for the grant funding. We don't actually have to enter into the agreement for the actual construction and all of that on the site, but enough authority that council intends to support these things moving forward in order for both of these organizations and any other that comes forward to apply for grant funding, I think would be important for today. But I'll leave you with that. The issues before were whether it was to be an exclusive use or not, but at this time what is being proposed by Tesla is the 8 Tesla level 3 superchargers and 3 generic, which would be the CCS and CHAdeMOs, all available on that site. And Tesla would cover the costs of all the capital costs of installation, including about $200,000 worth of electrical infrastructure that's part of the costing to bring electricity to that site, doesn't currently have it. And they would offer those units there at no cost to the municipality, plus they would be paying the $14,000 a month about of transmission fees, and all they would look for is to charge the actual charging customer back for the cost of their electricity. And the same with the ZAP. They propose they would pay all of those fees and only want to recover the cost of the electricity, which is over and above all these other costs that we've talked about. So significant loss of revenue on the actual charging on the site, but these are the proposals in front of you. I've talked to Parks Canada a bit. They are working on having more electric vehicle chargers put on Parks Canada land throughout Canada. So there is some precedence around that as well in parks. And other than that, the report is there with you if you have any other questions. Hopefully I've covered everything.
Thank you, Mr. Furcho. Just for clarification, when this matter was last before us, we had some correspondence from Tesla that indicated there was sort of an option A and a new option B, but it wasn't entirely clear who would make the decision as to whether it would finally be A or B. And secondly, they wanted a response by July 2nd, which they didn't get. Has that changed anything?
Your Worship, so I did follow up with them, and in order to make the grant application, whether it's Edson, whether it's Tesla, whether it's ZAP, this would be the meeting to have that either direct from council or not in terms of a decision. Otherwise, the window has passed for the grants. So then all of these things are off the table. Given that from the time that that letter was crafted and arrived, our meeting schedule has changed. So that makes this the meeting for decisions that we need to make a decision. And I also talked to Tesla that there would be no desire from council on an option B. It's either all of the units with the generic for the CCS and Chatamo and the Tesla would be all that council would want to look for at this point, so they could go ahead with the grant application. And then if that was unsuccessful and they wanted to take a shot at Tesla only, that would be a future conversation and they'd have to return with that proposal. But for the purposes of today, it would be if council was supportive of that proposal that's in my report here with the 8 Tesla superchargers and the 3 level 3 superchargers of more the generic style, then that's all we're looking for today, that they can go ahead and apply for the grant. The same like ZAP, where both of those would be no cost to the municipality for a maximum of up to 15 years on that site in order for them to apply for the grants. And then once the grants are known, then we could go forward from there. But there is no option here for Tesla to be asking for Tesla only on that site. That was in the letter, but it is no longer part of the proposal. We dealt with that. So thanks for that clarity.
Thank you. Councillors? Councillor Kelleher-MP?
To Mayor Ireland, to you, Mr. Furcho, I'm really confused. So last week when we discussed this, my understanding was A or B, but now, so today, are we only making a decision that we support Tesla going into this grant application, and the same for ZAP? Is that what you're asking the decision for today? Or if we go ahead and then they both successful in the grant, they all get to be on the site? Like, I'm a little confused.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Kelleher-MP, that is, I guess, apologies for that confusion, but first off, I guess it's an intention from council whether or not council is supportive of these companies setting up electric vehicle charging on public property would be the first question we should probably address. And then the second one would be in the recommendations, I would go down to recommendation 2, if we could deal with that first. The council has support for EV charging stations in the parking lot across from Robinson's, irrespective of what company goes there, because we've talked about before having that site available for Tesla, but also anybody else that would like to put in a charger in Jasper, that would be the location for those. But Whether they can make it work financially or not is a whole other question for level 3 chargers, given the expense. And then the second authorization would be that council authorize the mayor and CAO to enter into any agreements or grant funding requests required for the third-party EV chargers and infrastructure at this council-approved location. Those would be the two things I'd be looking for today. But certainly we shouldn't proceed if council isn't supportive of what Tesla's proposing in their larger proposal, then we shouldn't proceed with that. And same with whether council is supportive of having third-party EV chargers on public land or not, then we shouldn't proceed. So maybe we should deal with whether council is supportive of third-party EV chargers on public land first, and then we can get into the other matters second.
May I ask another question, Mayor Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Furcho, so the Edison proposal that's based around Alberta, if they got the grant, that could come on Jasper's public land, but it could actually go at anywhere we wanted it to go. It wouldn't have a specific place. Am I correct?
Your worship, through to Councillor Keller-Embry, that is correct. It would, the Edson one is really, all they're looking for right now is seed funding money, and then to try to go for the grant, and then there is some expectation of cost sharing after the fact, because the grant is not 100%, the grant's 50%, and the grant does not cover that $1,100 a month that is required as well. It's so it would be, we'd still need, you know, $60,000 to $100,000 plus the $1,100 a month plus the cost of electricity. Somebody would have to pay for that.
So the ZAP, if we supported, so today are we supporting ZAP and Tesla, or just one? Are we like, can they both be there? Like, is that what you're asking?
If we deal with the question of council supporting the EV chargers on public land first, then the second question would be if council supports the mayor and I to sign off on them applying for the grants, and then we just wait and see who gets it, if anybody gets it, and go from there. We just return to council after. But if council's not wanting these third-party EV chargers on that site, then we shouldn't go there.
Does it have to be that site? Could it be another site?
It certainly could be. That was the reason we chose that one. Was it's one of the big problems with EV chargers is that a lot of times they take up the prime parking spots in the downtown, and then there's a conflict with EVs and other parking. And in this case, that was selected as sort of the farthest away from the downtown site. And there's a cost to run electrical infrastructure there, but it's the least intrusive on other parking. So that's what we planned for that.
Thank you.
Councillor Journeau.
Thank you. Mr. Furcho, in your list of available stations now, I don't hear mention of the existing Tesla charging station in the parking lot next to the railroad. They seem to have 6 sites there, and they have their sign there, their charging station. I realize it's not level 3, but I'm wondering why that's not mentioned.
That might have been the ones Parks Canada was just putting in. So I mentioned that at the end, but I didn't put it in my list because when I first put the report together, that wasn't part of it. I wasn't aware that they got them in. I knew they had arrived in Jasper. I didn't know they installed them. So they have installed those level 2 chargers by the train station. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. There's, from what I could see, 6 stalls. They have 2 charging monitors. I can send you pictures. I think I've circulated some of this. But I'm sorry, I guess I didn't pass it on to you. But yes, they do have an installation there. And recently, most recently, when I went there to review it, to see it again, because it's not mentioned, there was a car being charged there, a Tesla vehicle. Okay. So I can forward those. Well, you know what the location is.
Yeah, no, and your worship, through Councillor Journeau, the last part of my report is I was aware that Tesla had shipped those chargers to Jasper. They were looking at a number of locations, including that one, to install them. I just wasn't aware that they actually got through installing them. So those are the level 2 chargers.
Go ahead and continue, Councillor Journeau.
So if they already have a spot, that's one thing. But secondly, think that this is a spot that should be preferred by us. To have the level 3, presumably they charge what, in 15 or 30 minutes. We want them parked by the shopping areas, and they go shopping into our downtown core rather than parked next to the hotels. So to me, that's a preferred area. Secondly, from a parking point of view, that's a corner of the whole Parks Canada commercial parking lot that's seldom full, seldom utilized. Whereas the parking across from the IGA is kind of like prime parking, in my opinion. So I would prefer the location that they already have. Thank you.
Councillor Demoto?
Yeah, I was just curious to see if we got any feedback or if there's any input from the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway Association and if they have a position on this. You know, I know that this is a private interest, but I was just wondering, you know, if there's any support there, you know, and even advocacy for funding, if we got any support from that group at all, or if they're aware of what's happening.
Your worship, through Councillor Demoto, was that for me or was that for our representative on the Highway Association?
Well, I'm not either or. Like, if Bert is Councillor Cherneau, are you still the council member on that one?
Yes, specifically, what are you requesting, Councillor Demoto?
Well, I'm just wondering, like, do we have any, like, could we get any work for support on funding on that? And are they supporting Edson? Are they aware of this initiative? And like, do they have a position on it? Are they for supporting a private business, or is it, I don't know, like, there's lots of questions, I guess. I was just wondering if they're aware of it and if they're doing anything about promoting electric EV chargers or Tesla or anything in the area. Maybe that's something we could bring up. It'll be a little too late, but.
Yes, our annual meeting is coming up this month. They are aware of it, but like everybody else, they're promoting it. I don't think that Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway has any resources to be able to put forward to the installation of these stations.
Thank you both, Councillor McGrath and then Councillor Kelleher-Rempe.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. On the first item for discussion, electric vehicle charging stations on public lands, I believe what I see from the other communities in the West Yellowhead region working on initiatives and from the rest of the province and other provinces is that it does appear as if electric vehicle charging stations are mainly and predominantly happening on public lands. So I don't find that it's too rare or odd to see a proposal for electric vehicle charging stations to be on public lands, though I do understand and appreciate and respect the perspective that other councillors have on using commercially public space. Though we've had this before us at a significant expense, both capital expense for the infrastructure as well as the cost of the ongoing distribution charges per month. And I don't believe that this should be an expense carried by the residents of Jasper. Though many residents of Jasper are starting to purchase electrical vehicles, and visitors would like this opportunity as well. And an opportunity is exactly what this is. It's an opportunity that's being offered to us where the capital costs and the ongoing distribution charges will be paid for by an outside entity. Yes, it won't necessarily be our infrastructure at the end of 15 years, but it's exactly what we need at zero expense to move our community forward, to decrease our carbon footprint, and to act as environmental stewards. So I do support both electric vehicle charging stations on public lands, as well as the location that has been proposed, being that it is the least intrusive in the parking area and it is close enough for walking distance to our central business district.
Thank you. Councillor Kelleher-Rempe.
I think I'd be more in support of it if it wasn't in the prime location. Like, I went actually and walked the parking lot last night, and it's actually a prime parking lot. And with what's happening with COVID, I don't think we're going to have bus traffic next year. I think we're going to have more and more car traffic coming to Jasper, and it's right across from the grocery store, etc., where I think if that's taken up with 8 spots for Tesla and then 1 or 2 for charging the new charging station, the generic one, I think that it would be far more suited either in the RV parking lot or in our new parking lot to be used for a charging station.
Mr. Furcho, my recollection was that the site that was proposed for the Tesla initiative was chosen in concert with ATCO because it had some facility that wasn't available anywhere else, or not at the same cost. Is that correct?
Your Worship, there's a number of factors, so I'll just touch on a couple of them. So Tesla has been in town a couple of times here, so I did work with them on looking at different sites in town. So there are a few things that they look for with the sites. One is, although it's, you know, the number of of units with 8 electric vehicles for Tesla and 3 of the others, it's quite a number of stalls being taken up. So the concern being not being in the downtown with that many stalls being used, because it is such a big development, and then it does create conflict when they can't be parked in by other vehicles and in the downtown. So one is to be away from the downtown, one factor. Another factor is the electrical infrastructure. So there is a big electrical pipe we can patch into that connects by the railroad tracks there to bring the wire up in the transformer for the power required. It's a fairly, with that many units at the level 3, there's a huge power demand required and a big transformer that needs to be put in. So that is available, you know, at a distance at that location. I do know with where in the Parks Canada parking lot, I can't remember, but I think those level 2s might have maxed out the transformer there. I'm not sure. I'd have to find out. But then digging up and replacing there is a little more difficult. And then lastly, I know Tesla has some desire, if they're going to put a unit in town, that there is some visibility to it, not being off too far, and whether that works or not for them if we require them to be away from the main drag or not. I'm not sure if that would be enough of a factor to deter them from continuing to pursue Jasper or not either. But I do know I had proposed to them other less visible sites, and they didn't have any interest in that as well. So it's kind of all a number of factors and desires from all parties on the table at the same time, if we can work through that.
And while I'm asking questions, and I'll continue for a second, the proposal that came first was the Tesla proposal, and now it's 8 level 3 Tesla specific and 3 level 3 generics. We've now heard from ZAP, and we've also heard from the Northwest EV charging network, or whatever it's called. Is there any opportunity for each of those, and maybe others if they come forward, to piggyback off one location? In other words, if we were to agree to allow Tesla to go ahead, whereas it's been proposed at the north end of Connaught, would they even allow another entity, presumably a competitor, to tie into the electrical system that is going to cost $100,000 to install? Or would those other companies or agencies be required to duplicate that sort of infrastructure somewhere else? So do we have any idea whether any of these companies can get along? They all seem to want the same thing, which is an opportunity to have profile on public land for free. Would they be prepared to share?
It's an excellent question, Your Worship. So when we first worked with Tesla for that site, one of the proposals was that they would bring in the extra infrastructure to allow the municipality, if we got the grant, to put in the generic level 3 charger on that site. Because whoever goes first, so to speak, there's a significant cost to bringing the electrical infrastructure in. And then when that infrastructure goes in, the other limiting factor is at the end of that electrical cable where they patch to the site is the transformer. And then so whether that transformer that then Tesla provides to put charge to their sites would then be able to even put power to how many more, or if that other charger would require its own wire and transformer, you know, if they want to put 1, 2, or 3. And like, those are questions for ATCO. And I would know that if there's more than one party wanting to work on one site, they'd be required to work through ATCO. And I think ATCO could coordinate some of that. So they're not running everything in parallel, but there are limitations. These things are pretty massive in terms of their draw and power for short bursts of time. And so the amount of capacity for the electricity, both in the wires and in each installed transformer, becomes a factor. And it's a little bit out of my league to say exactly what can be and cannot be installed in any one site and how much that costs. But I do remember for the 8 level 3s and the additional 3, it's about $200,000 worth of infrastructure, and that is pretty much the end of what they can put on one transformer at that site. Whether it can accommodate more or not, I'd have to find out.
Thank you for that. Councillor Demota.
We have a lot of agreements with other entities in the community, whether it's agencies on payments in lieu of taxes. And here we're getting a proposal for coverage of costs in the ability to use public space. We charge for public sidewalk use for businesses. We have contract set up with the local food market. Have we talked to legal counsel on what type of wording in a contract or agreement that we would be coming up with in that trade, understanding that the proposal is to use public space and we can't just give that up for free. So obviously we've talked about that exchange and how that exchange would, I guess, be in place of us charging them taxes or a fee for using that space.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Demota, so we have not talked about a fee for the use of the space, just given that electric vehicle chargers at this point are quite a money losing venue. So it's about, like I said, there's the capital cost to install it, and then there's $1,100 a month for each unit for the transmission cost payable to ATCO. So they would be paying, after the capital costs of installation, $14,000 a month to ATCO to just have that thing sitting there before anybody has charged a vehicle. So I guess right now there's not a lot of economic viability in these charging stations. So the question is, as a municipality, do we want to pay the capital cost and the ongoing monthly cost to have a charger there, or do we want to have a third party do it? And then they would pay all those costs. And then a third level would be, is if they're that comfortable with that site and paying those costs, do they want to pay some kind of fee on top of that? Because that might be a deal breaker as well. So I think there's really 3 questions there.
If I may respond.
Yes.
Mayor Island through to Mr. Furcho. Okay, I understand that, but what if I'll just use myself as an example, or a visitor just pulls into that Tesla charging spot that's designated for Tesla chargers, that isn't just a normally a gasoline aspirated machine vehicle pulls in there. And so what would be the enforcement there? And so if it's going to be like for Tesla vehicles only for their particular spots, that's taking up public space as a patio would on on the main street or in our commercial sector. So what's the trade-off for the community? Because that's an area that belongs to the town of Jasper. So if we're going to give that up, what I'm saying is, if they're going to be providing something in return, whether it's the infrastructure or the payment for the power to that for X amount of years. I'm saying that we should have that in writing. So what's the trade-off? What does the community gain by that? The residents, the tax-paying members of the community, what do they gain by, other than having Tesla vehicles come through the community, that trading of that space?
Your Worship, through Councillor Demota, and this is actually the sort of council level debate that I'm hoping not to be involved in too much, that is really around the philosophy behind whether or not council wants to have commercial entities putting EV chargers on public lands to charge vehicles. And at first, if it was Tesla only, that would be an argument. But if you look at what's the traveling public and what's the Jasper community need for charging electric vehicles, and there is by and large mostly Tesla. And if Tesla was proposing Tesla only, that would be one conversation, but they're proposing 8 Tesla and 3 generic. So basically they would provide a venue where anybody could charge their electric vehicles. And then that allows Jasper to be on the map for electric vehicle travelers across Canada. We become a service center for electric vehicles, and the businesses all benefit by having that venue available or not. And yes, there are level 2s being charged all over, or available in hotels and now in the parks parking lot and whatnot as well. But from an electric vehicle perspective, I'd say they're almost obsolete in that they are so slow that people don't plan their travel around those unless they're staying in a hotel. So there is some trade-offs. The other way of looking at it is if we as a municipality want to pay the capital cost and the ongoing operating cost, then that's a cost to the taxpayer. And if we just simply don't want to go there and don't support this or don't support doing it ourselves, then we just don't go there. And we're just not part of that at this point, other than the level 2s available in Jasper. So those are kind of all the philosophical sides of this, and I'm really not comfortable as administration getting into that part with council. That's council's discussion.
Councillor Demota, if that is truly a follow-up, I'll let you go. Otherwise, I'll go to Councillor Butler and come back to you.
Well, I'll put it out for greater discussion to council, because I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around this. So, like let's say Timex or Rolex or Omega wanted to come in and donate a clock that they were going to pay for the power and have this and have a town clock and the thing to help run it, whatever it is, they would pay for the cost. The trade-off would be they're doing in the contract, they're providing this for using this space to feature their clock. So now I'm looking at Tesla coming in. They want to take up municipal space. So if administration can't answer this question, how do we enter into an agreement and a contract like we would with any other business that wants to use public space to operate? So if they're saying that they're going to pay for the infrastructure and they're going to pay for the power for 10, 15 years, whatever it is, do we get that in writing? And is that the trade-off for using that space? If there's a contract, you have to have something in writing. So
Your Worship, through to Councillor Demota, that is absolutely, there would have to be a contract. We do have a legally binding contract agreement with Tesla that would need to be signed. I have a copy of it, but I'm not going to be using that yet until we're wanting to go down that road. So I guess in answer to your question, with any private entity using public land, the question really would be, does that help council achieve one of their goals that they would be unable to achieve any other way? So there's that's what public-private partnerships have evolved from. And if it's philosophically not going to work for you, then that's one thing. If a private entity agreement is a way of achieving something that's a council goal without using taxpayer money, that's another. And it's just a number of ways of looking at it. But yes, 100% requires a legal agreement, a legally binding agreement to the use of that site before they would invest money. And we'd still have to go to development permit and Parks Canada and all that stuff too.
Councillor Butler and then Councillor McGrath.
Thank you. I want to thank Councillor Demota for bringing up. This is all about a question of community benefit and benefit to a private company. And I have struggled with this from day one. I think many of us have. I think we've all been ready to acknowledge there's some community benefit and benefit to the priorities that council has identified with respect to green energy and so on. And so there is community benefit. The question to me has always been about the balance between that community benefit. Is there adequate community benefit in return for the benefit to Tesla? And I have cautiously felt that not really. The benefit to Tesla was just too sort of one-sided. However, for me, this change with the inclusion now of level 3 chargers, and it's a really big difference from the inclusion of level 2 chargers, because as Mr. Fritcho said, level 2 chargers are really already almost obsolete. So for me, that is a game changer. It swings the benefit pendulum enough for me to be convinced by this. The community benefit is intangible. We could talk from, now until the end of our term about whether being on that Tesla map, being included in more itineraries by EV drivers how big is that benefit? It's so immeasurable that it's almost an impossible conversation. But I find myself ready to support this with that change. And we've been clear that if Tesla can't get the grant and therefore can't find itself able to provide the generic chargers, then we're back to the drawing board. I'm not really concerned about the written contract. I trust administration to make sure that our interests are protected. So I'm on side. I don't love the site right across from the grocery store. I would have preferred the far end, the north end of that site, but I don't want to reconfigure the conversation right now. It's better than a more central location. To me, it's equal with the, say, the parking lot that I think we've talked about as the Parks Canada parking lot, or the one across by Hazel Avenue. I also noticed that if we wanted to add more parking in that area, it is the easiest area that we could add another row of parking, because there's a boulevard of green space right adjacent to Connaught. So, if we find we're short of parking down there, it is the place in town that's easiest to add more parking. We do public-private partnerships regularly. We just don't necessarily recognize them, but we have exactly that with ATCO. ATCO is a for-profit company that we give them, in return for benefit to the community, we give them the right to operate their infrastructure on public land. We do the same with, Shaw, TELUS, these companies, because we recognize that they accrue benefit to the community for things that our residents want and need. So to me, what I was waiting for was a change to that exclusivity, which bothered me, that only Tesla benefited and only Tesla drivers benefited. We could negotiate all day. We could say, well, we want 4 instead of 3, but the split 8-3 of the Tesla chargers versus the generic kind of reflects the range of vehicles that are out there. So it's taken some time. I really appreciate this good report that has come through and the way this conversation has moved, but I'm ready to vote in favor of this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I agree with you, Councillor Butler. The change with the 3 universal chargers added has changed things significantly so that it is not exclusive to Tesla. I am a driver of a non-Tesla electric vehicle, and I will be quite satisfied to do my grocery shopping and receive a charge while I'm doing my errands. And to answer Councillor Demota's question about, is this going to be something that we embrace with everything else? If we want a large clock in town and a large clock dealer comes to us and says, I'll put up the clock and I'll pay for the clock's distribution charges, I think I would welcome that with open arms. Sponsorship is amazing, and many communities get their infrastructure and their facilities by sponsorship from outside companies. You know, if someone came to us and said, I would gladly sponsor this water slide if you'll put my company's logo on it, I think that's remarkable. And I believe that it would be embraced by our community if we can save our tax dollars, as this did come before us and it was something that we wanted to do, so much so that we included it in our strategic priorities. But it wasn't something that we could afford to do. It was before us and it was intangible. We wouldn't have been able to have it if those distribution charges were ours each month of $15,000 and the upfront capital was just too much for us. Aside from the company being able to recuperate funds by single vehicles charging and making money off of it, that's the only catch that I see. But I too, as Councillor Butler stated, I'm convinced this is positive. Not only is it a community benefit, this is a global benefit.
Councillor Demota?
Yeah, I'm still for trying to go for an old style clock. I think it has an old town charm to it and everything, but that's a different conversation. So I wasn't throwing it out there because of that. But I think what I'm trying to really develop here is not getting involved in the contracts, but when we're providing something in lieu of taxes to other agencies in the community, or we're renting out, we're leasing out public space. Let's use the restaurants again as an example. We've determined how much a seat on for a restaurant is on that space. So what I'm saying is that what is the town, the residents of Jasper, trading for this physically? So what is the cost of one public parking space in the community that a company is going to come in and take over, much like a company that operates a restaurant takes a seat on a public sidewalk? So what is that worth? So if they're going to be, if what they're giving back is going to be worth more than that space, then great, it's okay to have it for free. If Mr. Furcho is saying that if there's going to be a fee involved, then the deal's off the table, or potentially kill the deal, then let's talk about that. I'm just talking about doing the same thing that we've been doing all along with other things. When we talked about taxation for the hostel, there were different things involved there, but because of we determined that they're operating an accommodation similar to hotels and that they should be taxed accordingly. That's the direction we took. So if we're doing one thing over here, I don't think we should be doing something different over there. And just going into a loose contract and saying that they're going to do this and this or that, I think it's better if the community knows what they're giving up, or what their return on investment for giving those spots up in the town, which the town belongs to the residents of Jasper. That's what I think. I don't know how to make my position more clear on that.
We could do the math, and somebody could help, but the contract has been reviewed. We have seen it, and essentially they will pay all the infrastructure costs, which has a value of a couple of $100,000, and after 15 years that becomes ours. So that's the benefit. So divide that by 15 years and that's the annual cost roughly for the use of however many parking stalls. But I do share the concern that, well, firstly, I too see the addition of the generic level 3s as a really significant change, because it does qualitatively change the proposal to be much more egalitarian. It's still weighted toward Tesla, of course, but it's better than it was. But I also find it really interesting that at the time of this discussion, we now have two other proposals, one from ZAP and one from the Northwest Alberta Network. And so if we are inclined to say that there is community benefit, it seems to me that we would have to say that for all proponents who come to us and say, we would like public land to put up RV or pardon me, EV charging stations. So if the request for decision is limited to the Tesla proposal, I am concerned because I think it should be generic. That is, if Tesla can do this, anybody should be able to do it. But do we have the space for that? What would be required? But I don't see how we can proceed on principle and say yes to one and not say yes to others. And then it does open the same question that Councillor Demota has been asking, which is the sort of the thin edge of the wedge argument. To what else could this apply? I think all business might benefit if there is another hotel in Jasper. If we had land, could we give public land for a hotel? Because there is community benefit in having more people here. I mean, there are other issues at stake, and we should proceed, I think, on the basis of fairly clear principles. And while I am supportive of doing what we can to enhance the electric vehicle industry, I think it is the future, and it will be an important part of our local future. We have to take great care that the support for the industry does not translate simply to support for some players in the industry. There's a line that we have to be careful that we don't cross. So generally I can be supportive, but only on the basis that my support is broad-based and generic for those who might come forward, and 3 have now with proposals for electric vehicle charging stations. We cannot do this as a one-off, in my view, just for Tesla. We have to be cognizant that there are other players in the field and we cannot benefit just one. But with that caveat, I share Councillor Butler's views that it is, I suppose, a game changer to add the 3 level 3 generic charges. And otherwise I would not have been supportive of the Tesla proposal. But I will only support it if there is a recognition that it supports all who want to play in this game. Anything else from anybody? I suppose, Mr. Percho, you need a motion?
Your worship, yes. And for the purposes of today, I was thinking with the recommendations, number 2 and number 3 would be what we would deal with for today. And that would allow us to have whether or not council supports an EV area on public land, which is in that parking lot. And that way anybody can be directed to that site and to see if they can make it work or not. We've somewhat set where this is allowed. And then the second motion would allow you and I to authorize any grant funding agreements that come forward if one of these companies wants to try to see if they can make it work, if they get a grant on that site. And then again, you know, for me, there's a large question around whether or not they get the grant, first of all, and even if they do get the grant, if they can make it work financially, because there is such a significant cost to this with almost no return. Like, the return would be what they can charge for the electricity, the transmission costs, they have to eat that, and the capital costs as well. It's just a company like Tesla, they obviously sell cars. Zap sells advertising. So they're going to need to do other things to make the money, to make that viable for that site. So those would be the 2 things. The actual agreement for the 8 Tesla level 3s and the 3 generics, the legal agreement, if council's supportive of 1 and 2, and if Tesla gets the grant and we're going to move forward, then I would get that agreement. I've got a fresh agreement that then I'd get a legal review on. And for Councillor Demota, it's a 15-year agreement. So we agree for 15 years, but it's renewable every 5 years on behalf of both parties. So it's 5-year renewable up to 15 years, and then everything's off. So that's the way that the agreement's structured. So that's kind of what, Mayor Ireland, what I have for council, if that's how you see stepping through it once the debate's completed.
Thank you for that. Councillor McGrath?
I'm prepared to make that motion. I move that council designate the south end of Connaught Municipal Parking Lot across from Robinson's as the location for EV charging stations in the municipality of Jasper.
Do you want to make it a two-part motion or just one at a time?
Sure. And that council authorize the mayor and CAO to enter into any agreements or grant funding request opportunities required to install municipal or third-party electric vehicle chargers and infrastructure to the council-approved location, and that any agreements with third-party providers be for up to 15 years with options for renewal.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor McGrath. Any further debate on the matter? I'll call the question. I'm sorry, Councillor Journeau, I can't tell. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. The motion is to support a certain location. And don't want to be seen to be opposing the green plan and all of everything else, but they already have a location. I can't understand why we can't enhance there. It just goes like, how much do you want? And for that, it just goes against mine. I mean, they have a site with their name out there. Sure, it's not prime site. And I think that's the only reason they're not proceeding with this. And for that, if that's the locate, if it's a 1 hour location, they already have one. I'm sorry, I can't support that location.
Thank you for that, Councillor Journeau. I see that Mr. Percho wants to respond, but it also seems to me that this is a request to the municipality, and that is not municipal land where they are now. It's park land. On the land that Parks got from CN, I think, is where those charging stations are now. I do not believe that it is municipal land, but Mr. Percho, perhaps you can address that. Mr. Percho, you're muted.
Well, that made me even sound even better then. Your Worship, through to Councillor Journeau, the back part of my report deals with that. So what happened in Parks Canada as a national organization was Tesla donated the level 2 chargers to Parks Canada across Canada to install in parks wherever Parks Canada so chose. And that's Parks Canada chose that location. They just got a box of these chargers to put in that were provided by Tesla, and that's where Tesla's involvement in those ended. And it was just a straight up donation to Parks Canada. They could put him in remote locations or town locations or wherever they wanted, but there's no Tesla involvement other than the donation of those units. So it's a completely separate initiative and proposal. That's more Parks Canada chose that site than Tesla. I mean, whether they were even in Jasper or not was up to Parks Canada.
Any further debate about Councillor Journeau?
May I respond, please?
Yes,
it's
yes.
still Tesla's name, and it's still usage of public land. I don't care whose public it is. There's a shortage of parking in this town, and I'm sorry, I just don't know why they can't enhance that one. There's not enough answers for me to support the new location. I'm very sorry.
Thank you. Any further debate, Councillor Butler?
Sorry, I know you'd like to bring it to question, but I am unclear that land, where are these level 2 chargers, and is that not municipal land? That parking lot is in the town boundaries, is it not?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Butler, that is Parks Canada's parking lot. Is that I was aware they were going to install them there. I did know that, but I didn't know they had actually installed them there. It's the Parks Canada parking lot. It's not a municipal parking lot. And there is a buried transformer there, but I'm not sure that it can handle the level 3. I think the level 2s might have maxed it out. I'm not sure. But again, it was just Parks Canada got a box of those things to put in wherever they wanted.
All right, thank you.
I will not rush if anybody else wants to contribute to the debate, but if not, I will call the question. Are you ready for the question? All right, so the motion is the second 2 points in the request for decision that council designate the south end of the Connaught Municipal Parking Lot across from Robinson's as the location for EV charging stations, and that council authorize the mayor and CAO to enter into any agreements or grant funding requests required to install municipal or third-party EV chargers and infrastructure to the council approved location, and that any agreements with third-party providers be for up to 15 years with options for renewal. All in favor? Opposed? There's one opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 10, correspondence. We have a letter with respect to the activity center opening, although
I believe we lost audio.
I think he's just frozen. The internet got problems today, big time.
Yeah, Mayor Island, we lost you. Looks like you just signed out.
Yeah, just 1 minute. I'll try to bring him back here.
It's not a good technology day for us. But that's okay.
Well, I don't know what to do in these situations. We want the deputy mayor to go through the letters, or how do we want to do this? Because it's a technological glitch that it's not part of our procedures anywhere. The mayor's
The
still
deputy
trying to.
mayor, the deputy mayor could take over the agenda chairing, I would think, if he's willing.
Thanks for the short notice. I mean, the long notice. Yes, as your deputy mayor, we can move to item 10, correspondence and information. Item 10.1 is a letter regarding the reopening of the fitness center, which we covered. Reopening of the Jasper Activity Center. We didn't discuss that earlier. Letters from Mike Cassio regarding the concrete barriers. I'll stop there. Is there any comment, discussion on those first three? Councilor McGrath.
Thank you, Councillor Journeau. Just in regards to agenda item number 10.2, the reopening of the activity center with Mrs. Cobal's request, I believe that she was asking for the activity center to be opened 1 week prior to the date that we put forward in motion earlier today. So I think that that's probably quite reasonable, and I hope that the patrons and the users, as well as the tenants of the activity center, will be happy with having a date now set.
Councilor Butler.
I didn't think we'd set a date for the activity center.
Comments, please.
Well, I think we haven't done that. I think that's a conversation yet to come. Maybe I didn't understand Councilor McGrath's comment, which I thought implied that we had set a date, but we have not set a date.
Councilor McGrath.
I was going to ask for confirmation earlier on the precise wording of the motion, and I was under the assumption that we included all facilities in that date, but I am wrong. So I am sorry, I apologize.
Very well. Councillor Kelleher, MP, please.
I did suggest that, and Mayor Ireland said that the motion on the table today was for the Jasper Fitness Center, and that next week the other two are in July. Later in July, they will come back before us for decision.
That is correct. So we have a notice of motion for reopening of the Aquatic Center, Activity Center, coming in 2 weeks. Can we move on? Councillor Butler, you seem to be, are we losing audio?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I have to somewhat stand corrected myself, because I think we did imply that we were ready to consider opening the aquatic center at the same time as the fitness center, and I'm now realizing that RFD also included the activity center, which I guess I missed the memo on. So, Councilor McGrath, I didn't mean to contradict you straight up. So we haven't formally set a date, but the activity center is included in that RFD. So I had in fact missed that. So my apologies if I've caused further confusion.
Thank you. I see our mayor is back and available, so I will turn it back to him for the next controversial item.
And how many controversial items did you get through in my absence? Where are we at?
Sorry, item 10.3 under correspondence, concrete barricades.
All right, so there is a letter to that effect concerning that. Councillor McGrath?
Just for clarification, Mayor Ireland, and you may not have this in front of you, administration may. I'm wondering what the precise wording was of our motion for agenda item number 9, reopening of the fitness center. Did we include the aquatic center and activity center in that, or did we not?
We did not,
Okay.
is my recollection. So that the aquatic center and activity center, I think, come back July 21.
Thank you.
All right. In any event, then 10.3, a letter from Mr. Casio concerning barricades. I'm not sure that it requires a response. It's information, though, for council. The next item is, again, a letter or an email regarding the issue of cats on leashes pursuant to our bylaw. And again, a reiteration of the request to make that more public. And I can't say I have taken a look at the page on the website that has been referred to us. I'm not sure whether staff has, but whether a plan can be developed to increase public awareness about the need for cats on bylaws. Mr. Virtue, I think that's an administrative issue.
Your Worship, and just for council's information, I don't know if it was this or other things that have been out in the community, but our bylaw services has responded and issued a number of orders on cats that have been roaming to be restrained and maintained in homes and on leashes. And I've certainly seen the results of that in a few cases where the cats are now more contained and licensed. So there has been some. We can promote that a bit more, but people are definitely phoning bylaw more often on this exact subject now. So there has been some communication out there.
Thank you for that. Agenda item 10.5 is a letter from the Minister of Municipal Affairs regarding the Economic Recovery Plan. For information, unless someone thinks otherwise, there should be some action. And finally, the letter from Zap Charge Inc. regarding EV chargers, which was dealt with as part of agenda item 9.3. Councillor Demota and then Councillor Chernow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Mr. Furcho. That letter reminded me of a question that happened, I think, before. We had another letter come in before our break, and there was some correspondence that indicated that we were getting $50,000 from the ID 12, the improvement district. I was just wondering if that was already earmarked, or was that something in response to our request to help get some support for that public washroom?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Demota, I'm not aware of anything specifically in terms of funding for an initiative like that. Like typically, the ID administers MSI funding that goes from the province, and there's an allocated amount for Jasper, and they simply administer that amount as it flows to us. And I'm not aware of any like new or additional money that was provided for any specific purpose. And they typically, the ID is generally not like a source of new or unexpected funding. It's more agreeing to the allocation of the funding we have and more agreeing to the purpose to which we have chosen to expend it. And I'm not aware of that, anything specific to that purpose. It's typically capital funding as more than operational type things. But I haven't seen anything specific to that. So that's all I can tell you.
Okay, I'll try to go back and get a little bit more specific on that one. I thought it was $50,000 worth of new funding that came to us that didn't have a specific designation to it. So I'll double check on that. But this just reminded me of it, and I'd just like to revisit that for clarification.
Your Worship,
thank you.
Councillor Demota, if I could, just with the ID, typically the amount of money that's available to us through the ID, it's MSI money flowing from the province through the ID to the municipality, and we know how much that is each and every year. to the dollar, and it's just that they agree to what we are choosing to expend it on or not is the only conversation that occurs. So there's not really any extra or new money.
Thank you for that. Councillor Journeau?
I just want to go back to item 10.5, the letter from the Minister of Municipal Affairs. Mr. Furcho and I have had some back and forth a bit on the word shovel-worthy. Not clear on that definition, that description of that. We've always talked about shovel-ready. Shovel-worthy, to me, seems like something totally different. And I'm wondering if there's any clearer definition or any comments and feedback from other councillors on that one.
Thank you for that, Councillor Journeau. I saw that exchange between you and Mr. Furcho, and I thank you for picking up on that. Shovel-worthy seems to be a lesser standard than shovel-ready. In other words, yeah, it would be worthy to put a shovel in the ground for that project. So it seems to be a lesser standard, but who knows whether that was actually the word that was intended. But I will undertake to contact AUMA and see whether they have had any occasion to discuss that terminology with municipal affairs. It does come as a surprise, I think, to everybody to see new words like that thrown about. Unless anybody else knows what it means, I'd be happy to take any advice.
Your Worship, I did share an email. I did send that question to the Municipal Affairs Office, and the response I got back was the one I'd forwarded, which really was, for lack of a better term, a non-answer. It doesn't really specify.
All right, well, thank you for that. So that correspondence is all for information then. Is there any new business for council? Council reports. Councillor Demota and then Councillor McGrath.
Not entirely a report. I just wanted to thank council, administration, and members of the community that really put work into reviewing the mask proposal for town, and I just appreciate the level of debate that took place, the amount of thought and consideration. So and it's, you know, it's great what we can do as a collective, and I like the way things are going, and I really appreciate working with all of you. Same thing goes with the discussion on the fitness center. I think we had some healthy debate today, and I really embrace engaging in that. Regardless if we have similar or opposing views, it's always great to discuss. If we don't have opposing views, then we can't really get a good abstract on what the community really needs. And I think we're doing a really good job. And I want to reiterate that to administration. Thank you for the level and the depth of the reports that we get and the information. I understand sometimes it goes to the length of, you know, going in a different direction than what's desired by admin. So it's not taken lightly, but I personally appreciate it, and I'm enjoying the type of work that we're doing as a council and administration for the municipality. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Councillor McGrath.
The only thing that I have to report on today is that I will likely be absent from next week's meeting at 9:30 in the morning, and I will be in attendance the following week on July 21st.
Thank you. I will report just briefly that the Economic Recovery Task Force appears now to be going to a bi-weekly meeting rather than a weekly meeting. It just, with business increasing in the town, the members are just finding it increasingly difficult to manage a weekly schedule. So it looks like that will be a bi-weekly meeting. Any other reports? If not, Councillor Journeau.
The annual meeting of the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway Association has been postponed many times because I think people are very uncomfortable with Zoom. So it's to occur on either July 23rd or 24th. Still, elements of doubt, but it's been narrowed down. it'll be a Zoom meeting.
Thank you. We have no upcoming events listed. Is there anything to bring to the attention of council? If not, we have one in-camera item. It seems to me quite unlikely that when we conclude that, there will be any report that is public from that, but we will have to revert to open meeting to adjourn. For those members of the public, there is a link. If you're interested in coming back to see the close of the meeting, you can do that. We can send out an email, I think, if you've indicated that you wish to be notified when we're coming back. But I'm just suggesting that there won't be a whole lot of excitement in that, so I wouldn't wait too long. But otherwise, I would welcome a motion from a councillor that we move in camera at 4:52 p.m. Councillor Demota, you so move? All in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. So councillors, we have a separate email with a link so you can disengage from this meeting, and we will reconvene. I would suggest that we take at least 10 minutes or so, just to have a bit of a break. So how about 5:05 we reconvene with our Zoom in camera. All right, see you all then. Thank you to members of the public for with us for this afternoon's meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.